Well, ladies and gentlemen, if the polls are to be believed, the Democratic Party may be in the middle of a disastrous collapse where, for the first time in a very, very long time, the 538 Senate forecast, not the House, the Senate forecast has, by a very small margin, Republicans now favored to take the Senate. As you might remember, for a very long time, for months, it looked like 2-1, even 3-1 odds that Democrats would keep the Senate, but probably lose the House. Things have shifted and shifted and shifted to the point where now, if we are to believe the polling, and we will look at that in more detail, the most likely scenario is Republicans definitely take the House and maybe even take the Senate. By a 52-48 margin, Republicans now very slightly favored to take the Senate. It's basically a dead heat, but a far cry from the 70+% odds that Democrats had to keep the Senate just some months ago. If we look at the 538 forecast of how the odds have changed, you will see that, yes, back in late July, it was basically 50-50. And then Democrats building a lead all the way up to about a 71% chance of holding the Senate in mid to late September, and a collapse to where now it is Republicans favored to take the Senate. Over in the House, the number's even more dismal for Democrats. Now, an 84% chance that Republicans will win the House. If we look at how those numbers have changed over time, you similarly see that it was getting closer there for a period in early October, still roughly a 2-1 margin for Republicans, but now just completely out of reach. 84% chance for Republicans of taking the House. One question that many of you have asked, you came to me, some of you with tears in your eyes, and said, "Sir, can we trust the polling?" It is absolutely the case that when you look at a lot of the generic ballots, which aren't looking at individual races, but these are generic Republican or Democratic support in, for example, the House vote, it is true that there are some right-wing pollsters sprinkled in. Trafalgar, for example, which has Republicans +6, that's a right-leaning poll. Rasmussen is a right-leaning poll, and it has Republicans +7. But many of what are considered highly rated, non-politically partisan pollsters also have Republicans leading, but by a slightly smaller margin. CNN, NPR, Wall Street Journal, CBS News all have Republicans leading, but between 2 and 4 in that congressional ballot. So the most important thing to be asking is, what does this mean for what you should do? What does this mean for what I should do? And it means that we should vote. Just worry about you. You have one vote. Make sure that you use it. I have one vote. I will sure as hell make sure that I am using it. And then in 6 days, 6.5 days, 7 days, it'll be Wednesday morning, we will all have a very clear picture of where this all shakes out. But I would be lying to you, and I know every time, whenever I do this, people write to me and they say, "David, you bastard, you're discouraging people from voting by saying Democrats have lost." Well, I'm not saying Democrats have lost. I'm saying the polling is looking increasingly bad. It's actually a reason to vote. This should encourage people to vote. And then when Democrats are leading and I report that, people write to me and they say, "David, you bastard, you're going to make Democratic voters complacent," where they'll say, "Hey, we've got it. We don't need to vote." And no matter what I'm telling you, we should all vote. But there are some really bad looking numbers. Oregon, for example, there has not been a Republican governor in Oregon, or Oregon, as the former president likes to say. Oregon hasn't had a Republican governor since 1987. That's like 100 years, roughly. Think of that. We now have a Republican gubernatorial candidate in Oregon that is favored to win, not by a crazy amount, but slightly favored to win. Now, let's address a couple of issues related to this. First of all, I get right wingers. I see them on the YouTube comments. I see them on my Twitter. I see them on Twitch, and they are very much up in my email, gloating as if I personally have some particular stake in this that nobody else has just because I have a program. I'm going to tell you guys this again. I will do better in terms of my business and my show if Republicans win everything. So much like you all were coming to me in 2016 and gloating about Trump, and much like many of you were coming to me in 2020 and saying Joe Biden's going to lose, which, by the way, you were wrong about. I don't know what these folks are really gloating about because I have my one vote. I have no special extra votes just because I do a show. And again, I want what's best for the country. What's best for my business is that Republicans win everything all the time and Trump comes back and they take the House and they take the Senate and they take everything. Okay? I don't want that. But the gloating is kind of weird because it's just neither here nor there. Okay? That's number one. Number two, why is this happening? We have a combination of things. One, again, I just tell things the way I see them. Democrats are terrible on messaging, just absolutely terrible. Democrats have mostly ignored since the Roe v. Wade decision what we know year in and year out are important economic concerns and have minimized them to a great degree. Now, on my show, I just give you the numbers and I say, hey, you know what? Extremely low unemployment, nearly full employment, inflation is high, but it's flattening and it will come down. I just give you the numbers, right? But I'm not running a campaign. Democrats went in a little too hard on Roe v. Wade as the defining issue of the election. As I told you over the summer, the timing may not actually work. The importance of Roe v. Wade's repeal may fade by November 8th. And indeed, that seems to be happening. And there is a lack of a sort of escape hatch at this point for many Democrats who have moved to the side some of the economic concerns. Now, a lot of those economic concerns are based in misunderstandings. Like, for example, that the economy is a disaster. The economy is doing pretty well. Gas prices down, unemployment very high, new job creation high. But what matters is the perception of the economy. And by hammering on it, Republicans have made significant headway. In addition to that, typically, the party that wins the White House gets crushed in the following midterms. It looked like maybe 2022 would be an exception, but things are coming back to, it's a regression to the mean, you might call it. Historically, it should be a bad election cycle for Democrats. So that's the combination of what's going on. We will have the real numbers very soon. But if we're going to lose, I want to lose fairly. And that means no armed intimidation of voters at the drop boxes. And we've got to talk about that next. As many of you know, I am fascinated by cons and scams and multi-level marketing and all of this different stuff. I recently saw Inside the Mind of a Con Artist on CuriosityStream. It's 6 episodes and it was excellent. I don't think I would have discovered it were it not for our sponsor, CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream has all the newest and best documentary films. They've got the big titles from the well-known filmmakers. They've got valuable independent films, tons of original content that you can't find anywhere else. When I'm at home browsing my different streaming platforms, I find CuriosityStream to really have the best selection of documentaries specifically, because documentaries is all that they have, and they're always adding new titles. My audience gets access to CuriosityStream's entire library of documentaries for just $15 a year. That's 25% off. Go to curiositystream.com/Pacman or use the code Pacman. The link is down below.